Okay, hello, everyone. This is a regular assembly meeting of the Petersburg Borough. It is June 2nd, 2025. Will the clerk, I call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Johnston,
Here.
Member Marsh. Here. Member Newman,
Here.
Member Schwartz,
Here.
Member Stanton Gregor,
Here.
Member Lynn,
Here.
Member Valentine.
Here. We have a full assembly present today. It's now time for the voluntary pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Entertain a motion for approval of minutes from the regular assembly meeting of May 19th, 2025.
Make a motion to approve the regular assembly meeting minutes for May 19, 2025.
Second. Motion made in the second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous decision. Okay, amendment and approval of meeting agenda as presented today. I'd entertain a motion to move forward with the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, also unanimous vote. Okay, we have many public hearings today. And we'll start off with the public hearing for ordinance 2025-06. This is an ordinance amending section 4.28.130 of the Petersburg Municipal Code relating to the sales tax exemption for seniors to limit the exemption to low-income seniors and direct that the proposed amendment be submitted to the qualified voters of the borough. Anybody in the audience or zooming in wish to participate in this public hearing? So please step forward and state your name and who you represent. And we do have a 5-minute time limit on presentations. Yeah, well, yeah, that's our policy, but
My name is Liz Bacom and I represent myself. I support the changes proposed for the senior tax sales tax. I would like, however, to see accommodation for people who don't quite qualify according to the state of Alaska guidelines. A case in point, a single person receiving only Social Security and the permanent fund who is at the very edge of qualifying would be ineligible if their Social Security increases due to the cost of living increase of the Social Security. And that same individual might also then be deemed ineligible for SNAP and Medicaid, the latter of which pays for Medicare Part B, throwing them into an unstable financial situation. Additionally, the state of Alaska is facing challenges with staffing to get people qualified, and the process to apply can be very difficult for some folks. How we in Petersburg care and support our friends and neighbors who have limited financial resources really defines all of us. I hope the Assembly and the financial team develop a policy addressing extenuating circumstances for folks who fall outside the income bracket.
thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to participate in the public hearing on this ordinance? On that, public hearing is closed. We'll move. Oh. Sorry about that.
My name is Roseanne Blue, and I represent myself. What else was I supposed to tell you? Anyway, I didn't come here with prepared remarks because I have heard so little about this. I read it, and I agree with Liz, too. I think I would approve of that. I'm sorry, the change in the senior tax exemption. However, I kind of pay attention, and this is the first I had heard of this. Apparently you may not have meant to sneak it by, but I have a feeling there's a lot of people completely unaware of what this says and what it really means. And that being said, it's not likely to pass. I would just ask you to please get some more information out there to the people that it may affect the most. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your input in this public hearing. We do go through the same process with every ordinance. You know, there's 3 readings and this is the public hearing during the second reading. And I don't know how we would reach out to people in that financial level, but yeah, it's hard to pay attention to all of this stuff. Okay, is there anyone else like to participate in this public hearing for this ordinance? Seeing none. That moves us to the public hearing for ordinance 2025-07, an ordinance updating chapter 14.16 of the municipal code entitled Electric Utility. Anyone in the audience like to speak under this public hearing? And I don't believe anybody's zooming in. I guess I don't see anybody raising their hand, so.
There's no one on Zoom.
Seeing no interest, that public hearing is closed. Next public hearing is for ordinance 2025-08, an ordinance updating chapter 14.04.420 of the municipal code entitled Water Rate Schedule and Fees. Anyone in the audience want to participate in this public hearing? Public hearing is also closed. Try not to lose track. The next ordinance with a public hearing is 2025-09, an ordinance updating 14.08.320 of the municipal code entitled Sewer Collection Rates. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to participate in this public hearing? None. The public hearing is also closed. Last public hearing is on ordinance 2025-10, an ordinance adding section N, marine passenger ship refuse, to chapter 14.12.140 entitled Rates for Refuse Collection. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to participate in this public hearing? Seeing none, that public hearing is also closed, which brings us to item 6 on today's agenda, and that's bid awards. There are no bid awards today. The next item on the agenda is 7, and this is persons to be heard with items related to today's agenda. Is there anyone that would like to speak on items related to today's agenda?
Bob, could you speak a little closer to the mic for us? I think.
Excuse me, Mr. Martin, we might have some technical difficulty here. Is that his testimony not coming through?
How about now?
Yeah, if I could ask you, can you repeat the whole thing so people
Okay.
listening can, sorry about that.
I'm Bob Barton, Chair of the Harbor Board, but I'm speaking for myself because the Harbor Board was not asked to weigh in on this $1 million American Cruise Line dock facility budget amendment. I think a dedicated cruise ship dock is warranted. ACL seems to be a fine company and a good fit for our town. We seem to agree that small cruise ship tourism is valuable to Petersburg. But why does this value not find its way into borough finances? Why do we need to take Harbor Board reserve money generated from the fishing industry in order to partner with a cruise company? Do you think you have community support to take money from commercial fishing to subsidize tourism? I don't think that you do have that support. If you can't come up with a plan to replace this reserve money, then I think you have to admit that this form of tourism is a drain on the borough budget. So I'm asking you to commit to collect $1 million from cruise ship tourism revenue to put back into the harbor reserve. If you cannot do this,
don't pass this budget amendment. Just negotiate hard for the best long-term agreement that you can get with the leverage inherent in your power to grant American Cruise Lines the Tideland lease they applied for in April. They seem to be amenable to reasonable conditions. That should be sufficient to prevent one modestly sized dock from changing the character of our town. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony today, Mr. Martin. Is there anyone else with views related to items on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to persons to be heard with items unrelated to today's agenda. And I believe we have Mr. Haverlick zooming in. Are you there, Mr. Haverlick?
Go ahead, try again. It looks you unmute again. And I've unmuted you on this side.
We can't hear you, Mr. Haverlick.
Hello?
There, now we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, this is John Haverlick, and I have two things that I'd like you to consider for future meetings. One is to put up an ordinance similar to what Glow has done at the harbor, in having people leash their dogs and clean up their poop, and have the same actions that she's using at the harbor as far as the fines go. And the other thing is I would like also the assembly to make some regulations on the scooters that are in town here, setting a minimum age and some minimum training before people are allowed on the scooters. Because my wife and I walk through town every day, several miles a day, and we find there's really young kids on these scooters and people not knowing where to ride or how to ride them, which is really dangerous, going out into traffic, being on the bike trails, etc. So I wish you would consider those two things for future meetings. Thank you.
Thank you for your input today, Mr. Haverlick. Is there anyone else with views related or unrelated to items on today's agenda? Seeing none in the audience, I believe there's no one else zooming in. We'll move on to item 9 on today's agenda, boards, commission, and committee reports. There are none today. Nothing under item 10, the consent agenda. That brings us to report of other officers, and PMC CEO, Mr. Hofstadter, will give us an update.
Hello, good afternoon. Phil Hofstadter, CEO of Petersburg Medical Center. I submitted my report. A couple updates I'd like to let you know about. One is thank the borough for assisting in turning off the water Friday night, which was part of our planned project, replace some of the main water valve in our facility, which was actually a pretty big deal. We had an emergency water plan, and I just want to commend Wolf on facilities and some of the assistance in our plumbing. It's the name escaping me locally. But in any case, we had a successful project. It lasted from 8 p.m. till 2 a.m. And the reason for those hours was to the least impact to the facility. And so the water had to be turned off, replace a section of some valves within the facility. We were quite concerned. We know the aging infrastructure of the facility has been a major issue, and they had to freeze the pipe on both ends to make sure when they turned the water back on that the scale within the pipes wouldn't then damage further valves, and they did a really good job with that. We did get a snapshot of the inside of some of the pipe. I will be happy to send those along. It is definitely aging, and the number of the scale in there is very significant. So, but anyway, it was a pretty major effort, pretty major project, and went successfully. So a lot of effort in the planning from our facilities group. A couple of things to mention. Our facility is experiencing extremely high volumes in census, and this has been going on. I've been reporting out on this on a monthly basis. And often our, as I mentioned at our last board meeting, we see a lot of peaks and valleys in rural healthcare. You see a lot of census go up, and then you see it down, and averages over a pretty lower census, but it doesn't identify the peaks and valleys that the staff see. But in the past year, we've been seeing some of the highest census we've ever seen in a facility in our inpatient unit. So our inpatient swing bed, our rehabilitation program. This probably is related to our population aging in Alaska and in Southeast. So it's certainly seeing that as a trend. I would say, given the continuous ongoing numbers, that it is probably a trend we're seeing and going to continue to see. It's in addition to our essentially fully staffed long-term care, or full census in our long-term care facilities. So certainly seeing that, and it is continuing on. I want to commend our staff. Nursing staff has been at capacity as well with some of this, some of the census. So, and lastly is I was in DC earlier or last month, earlier as part of, as I was representing PMC, but also representing as my function as the executive board chair for the Alaska Hospital and Healthcare Association. And I went with their group, and we did have some FaceTime with all the delegates to get a better understanding of the impact of our budget and Medicaid budget in particular. So it does seem like a lifetime ago, but we are monitoring those as it makes its way into the Senate, and we're monitoring the cuts in Medicaid in general. So I have more information as I know it. So we'll keep you posted on that. The main things that they're looking at is really a focus on work eligibility with Medicaid, looking at redetermination and eligibility requirements on a more recurring basis, which does put some burden on the state to be able to do that. And it's challenging to do that in general. So it makes it more difficult to stay on Medicaid. It primarily affects probably our expansion population. I was told it wouldn't affect our elderly long-term care kinds of population, but it's still a significant hit to the state if it does occur. So more information with that as it comes through. And that's all I had. Did you have any questions?
Any questions? Member Lynn?
Yeah, Phil, at the board meeting last week, there was two issues. One, the board talked quite a bit about the long-term care. One of the questions was, is most of the residents of long-term care local, or are we drawing in from outside? Then the other question that was asked, I think, by the board was, in our planning for the new hospital, which isn't obviously totally complete, where are we at with the beds, and will it accommodate what we're guessing, would occur? If you can address those, I think the public would be very interested in that. And the other one had to do with, that the board talked about, was the bringing all the billing in-house and what a difference that made. And what I heard was it's quite successful, but if you would address it, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. No, those are all good points that to touch on. Firstly, related to long-term care and in our inpatient, specifically in the volume and the census I was talking about, whether we should look at expanding our long-term care beds is certainly and absolutely something we should revisit. One of the things that I think is not necessarily a bad thing is the phased approach with the new facility allows us some time to go back to the drawing board with some of the new facility architectural design. So the original design, which was 35% complete, focused on just replacing the hospital as is, just the space and the requirements in the beds, maybe adding one long-term care bed. But the cost per square footage is really significant in that new facility. So just keeping that contained was first and foremost. However, I think with some of what we're seeing here is just a snapshot of the future. I mean, when you look at the average age of our census, it's even a little bit lower than the average age of long-term care and inpatient census in the lower 48, which is actually a little bit surprising to me. So I think in general, I think it's a window of what is to come. And I think it's totally reasonable to go back to the drawing board a little bit and maybe look at some long-term care, additional long-term care beds. Because we're doing it in a phased approach, meaning that we're doing it as funding, not incurring debt and not incurring local taxpayer resources, that gives us some time to be able to do that. Now, the downside to that is what I was talking about with the infrastructure and the pipe, is the runway for our existing buildings. So, there's a balance there for sure as we look at our new facility up the hill. But definitely, Assemblymember Bob Lynn, I would say you're right on the correct line, that we definitely want to be able to look at our existing facility and make sure it captures, so that we're not in a situation where we have waiting lists. And then to add on to your question, are those people local? Yes, absolutely, they're local. And so we're certainly seeing Petersburg. It's not coming from outlying areas. These are all relative to Petersburg residents. And then as far as the AR and our financial, bringing our accounts receivable in-house, I've been reporting out on this since I've been here as a challenge in our accounts receivable, and we contracted out to a company that does that, and we switched to try to improve that, at some point in a couple of years ago, without improvement. So we then decided to bring it in-house, and that project, it takes a while to be able to do that, but we are seeing great results with that. And so our accounts receivable, despite the increases in our volumes, our accounts receivable is going down, and that's really a good sign. And, what does that mean for a local resident here is when you call the hospital and want to follow up on your bill, you're talking to somebody locally. You're not talking to somebody down south or in another time zone. It's local here, and that's really something, I think that's, from a customer service standpoint, that's really important. So there's some positive things for sure that we're reporting out from, and we're seeing from that standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions of Mr. Hofstadter? Member Marsh?
I do have one. Thank you. Regarding the long-term care, we presently have 13 beds. Is
We
that
have 15 beds, but some of those are double occupancy rooms, so we can't always have those occupied. If there's if it's a husband and wife, great, but we can't always occupy a double room, so.
okay? And then do we know what percentage of residents there are self-pay or on private insurance versus Medicaid?
Majority, whether it's here or anyone else, majority is Medicaid.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Hofstadter.
Yeah, thank you.
And now we have a report from the Petersburg School Superintendent, Ms. Taylor.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am Robin Taylor. I'm the superintendent for the Petersburg School District. Not a whole lot to report beyond we have had graduation and the school year is complete. So I want to just send a huge shout out to the entire community that has supported our students throughout the school year. It is amazing to continuously see a call for action go out from our principals or teachers, and just how gracious our community is in supporting our students. So it doesn't happen in every community. I've had the opportunity to work for 6 different districts, and I'm very proud of each district, but this was my first stomping grounds, and I hope it will be my last. And there's a reason why I wanted to come back here, and it truly revolves around the community and the support that you all lend to our students. As we're closing out this school year, teachers are done, students are done. We do have summer school occurring right now for some students that might just need a little bit more support to be on track for next year. And the administration and I were just working on closing out several of the grants. We've also are in the midst of applying for some state grants that occur every year, but also some outside of the state regular grants. So we'll see how that goes. And then with the legislature passing the budget and House Bill, now I want to say it's 57, but there's been so many bills, but the funding for the schools, that has been set at $700 in regulation. So that is what we're budgeting for. We also, though, are very much aware that our governor does have line item veto power, and so there may be an impact on that. We'll just have to wait and see how that lands. Then also just wanted to note that we are hiring for positions for next year and having completed negotiations this year with the support staff. We're hiring several paraprofessional positions as well as kitchen and custodial positions. So if you or anyone listening is looking for a position for next year, I really want to encourage you to come talk with us. And finally, construction is underway. The main offices in the high school don't look anything like any of you will have remembered. I was in there Friday afternoon and it was gutted out, and they were starting already to reframe the walls for the new construction in the office area. And starting this next week, we'll probably see a lot of action happening up on the roof for the replacement for the middle and high school. So I know that the contractor was waiting for some supplies to show up this week. And finally, also next week, LCG, the firm that we work with, will be on site with us to do a full inspection of all of the facilities that the district has to prepare for the next 6-year capital improvement process. And we anticipate that we will find some deficiencies in our buildings that we're not aware of, because the last time that we've had a thorough, comprehensive condition survey completed was in 2008. So we do anticipate that that we'll find some areas that we are going to need to be reaching out for funding on. So that's what I have. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions? Thank you for your report today.
Yep, thank you.
Enjoy the summer. That brings us to the mayor's report, pretty short today. It's SEPA annual shutdown. It will be starting, the hydroelectric Petersburg will be shut down from June 10th to the 18th to allow for numerous critical maintenance activities at Tyee Lake, Swan Lake, and the SEPA intertie transmission line. Petersburg Municipal Power and Light is asking the community to conserve electricity to minimize the loads, enabling us to keep our added costs down when operating diesels. Customers are encouraged to conserve power, which helps us burn less diesel and create a lighter load for our generators. As I mentioned before, I will be fishing this season. Probably won't be able to make many meetings, but if I can, I'll Zoom in or be here in person. And if I'm not here, then Vice Mayor Donna Marsh will run the meetings. Something that's not on the written mayor's report today, I thought it was time to announce that I don't intend to run for mayor in October. That's 4 months from now. That gives people that are interested in that, the mayor's position, to put their name in. So appreciate I guess it'll be 18 years of elected official in Petersburg come October 7th. So that's my mayor's report. So Member Giesbrook, Manager Giesbrook.
Thank you, sir. Property tax invoices will be mailed out on July 1st. Payment is due into the finance office by October 15th. Streets crew has been catching up on asbestos training for the last couple of weeks with a combination of both online and in-person classes. After this training is complete, all 5 of the streets crew will be fully certified for operations involving asbestos cement pipes. Been waiting for some dry weather so we can get some more grading and pothole repairs done. Have not been a lot of opportunities lately, but we're keeping an eye on it. 2 of the 3 surplus power and light line trucks have sold via online auction. Both bucket trucks were sold to a party in Anchorage for a total of $53,000. The digger Derek has been relisted online with an auction closing date of July 6th. Water production is running between 600 and 800,000 gallons per day, about 1/3 of what we normally see for peak production in the summer months, and both reservoirs are full. Alaska Rural Water Association will be in town with their leak detection equipment. We have several areas for them to check, including a leak in the Lake Oslog area that we haven't been able to track down yet. Pump Station 4 project began construction on May 23rd, although it is on hold right now as we deal with a nesting eagle situation. So we will let people know more when we know more about that. Volunteer Fire Department received a notice that the borough's AEDs were part of a recall notice. After investigation, Aaron found 1 out of the 18 that were identified by the manufacturer and the devices being repaired under warranty. Aaron has been working with Sea Grant folks, which is kind of a program under NOAA, with a local homeowners group that's been pushing for to compile more data related to landslides, better assess the risks associated with here on the island, and maybe come up with a way that they can be forecasted in a sense. And I don't know, Aaron, do you have anything to add on that?
Just at this time, they had a researcher that came up with that was, they went backpacking through the woods, and they did a helicopter flyover to view some of these sites, as well as looking at historical data, including weather data, known slide data, all that stuff. And he's compiling it for us in conjunction with some LiDAR that the Forest Service recently completed and released. And he's going to have that information for the government and other folks to review here next month or so.
Thanks, Aaron. Sorry, didn't mean to. The fire department was testing the standpipes in the South Harbor and found multiple leaks and breaks in the system. Ryan is working with the Harbor Department on repairing those. A reminder to borough residents within Service Area 1 that burn permits are required if you're not using a burn barrel with a screen. Burn permits can be found on the borough's website under the Public Safety tab. This information gets sent to the paid volunteer fire department staff and dispatch, so the fire trucks do not automatically get sent to your location if someone reports a fire at your place. State burn permits are required for all burning outside Service Area 1. Permits can be found online at the Alaska Division of Fire and Forestry website or by typing Alaska Department of Fire and Forestry burn permit into your internet search bar. Harbors are full, waiting list for all stall classes, approximately 100+ vessels. Harbor parking is being enforced on Harbor Way and Middle South Harbor and long-term at Drive Down. Kind of another reminder to boaters of the no wake zone outside all 3 harbors, and responsibilities for wake is on the owner operators. Steering committee and staff met with Dick Somerville from P&D to discuss the future of Scow Bay development. And Glorianne and I are working with the borough attorney to discuss particulars on a potential partnership with ACL Construction of the tour ship landing float. We're working internally. We have not talked to ACL yet until after the just assembly makes the next decision. The harbor is enforcing new ordinances concerning vessels that regularly don't move. Price increases and additional requirements will become effective January 1st, 2026. Contact the harbor for more information if you have any questions. Preliminary engineering work with Horion Associates is happening for elderly housing's next big project, which is the cooler freezer floor replacement. And elderly housing received a great score on our recent HUD required physical inspection of the building. Inspire is the new HUD program with lots of changes and requirements that we have to go through. So this is a great accomplishment to score well. Summer Stream, the library's summer reading program, runs from June 1st to July 13th. Children can participate in reading challenges, games, scavenger hunts, and hands-on learning activities that help build important skills. Sign up is now open at psglib.org, and we're thankful for the many local businesses and individuals who have generously donated to support the program. Petersburg Police Department is currently working on an MOU with the United States Postal Service that will designate one of our officers as a USPS Task Force Officer, or TFO. This designation will authorize Petersburg to conduct postal sorts at our local post office targeting suspicious packages that may contain drugs or other contraband. We anticipate the agreement will be finalized soon. Staccato will be in Petersburg on Sunday, June 15th, and leaving on the 17th. Staccato will be doing inspections on the department's duty pistols. This is a free service offered by the company. Parks and Rec is getting ready for their closure on Friday to reopen on June 16th. And Stephanie is working with the school district and their funding coordinator to help get the Aquatic Center sewer project listed on the district deferred maintenance list. I worked with Congressman Begich's office last week to provide additional information for the Banana Point boat launch area. His office is putting it forward as a congressionally directed spending request. And that's it, unless there's questions of me.
Any questions of the manager on his report today? Member Marsh?
I do, thank you. I'm wondering if through the mayor, we might ask Chief Kerr about the MOU with the TFO and what that looks like, how it came to be. Was it just an opportunity that somebody discovered? If you could elaborate on that, that would be acceptable.
So how it came to be is we always knew that the troopers they always had task force officers. So in talking to their task force officers, it came down to it being an MOU with the Postal Service or the postal inspectors. And so we're also part of CCAD, so that's our way into it. And so Eric, our CCAD officer, reached out to the recruiter for the Postal Service, for the postal inspectors. And so the postal inspector's currently drafting an MOU. And then once that's completed, we will sign on with that. It requires, I believe it's a week-long training that's put on every so often in California. So we'll send the officer to that. After that, that allows us to basically have some powers to do stuff. So we can actually, when years past, we weren't able to go into the post office and do stuff. This will change all that. We'll be able to go in there. We'll be able to do postal sorts, targeting suspicious packages. And then we can also help out with other things, like when they had the burglary up there, we weren't able to really do anything. We could assist them, but having a task force officer will greatly cut down on the going back and forth. We can, if they ask for our assistance, we can help them with that as well. And so I think it's a very big step in the right direction over years past and allowing us to target drugs in another way.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Chief. Lost in thought here. Any other questions of the manager? Seeing none. Time to move on to unfinished business. Ordinance 2025-05, an ordinance of the Petersburg Borough adopting the budget for the fiscal year July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. This is the third and final reading. We will consider this ordinance, which will be set the borough budget. The copy of the budget can be found on the website. In the second reading, the fiscal year 2026 budget was amended to make an appropriation of $1 million from the harbor reserves for purposes of a contribution to the dock facility project to be conducted by American Cruise Lines at the Petersburg Harbor, and to direct the manager to contact ACL to explore whether there is common ground on the proposed facility, including the possibility of developing a design aligned with concept number 7. If the parties are in agreement, the manager is to return to the assembly with a proposed financial plan and a timeline. No funds may be spent under this appropriation without the assembly's approval of a written agreement. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the budget ordinance, which is 2025-05, in its third and final reading.
So moved.
Second. Motion been made by member Stanton Gregor, seconded by member Newman. Any discussion? Member Lynn and then member Marsh.
I have two items. The first one is for the public's benefit. There is nothing in this coming year's budget contract-wise to do any kind of snow plowing at Papke's and those roads where the school kids, the school kids are coming out. And I just want to publicly note that there is nothing, there will be no contract snow plowing along those roads, the way it stands. The second item I have is I'm proposing to amend the budget. And I've got a copy here that I'm going to pass around, if you'll pass it over, please. And I propose to amend the budget to spend up to $6,000 from the Property Development Fund to pay Harari and Associates to develop revised concept drawings for repair and improvement to the Papley's Landing facility and establish a committee led by myself, and I want to add in there Manager Giesbrick, to work with the engineer and the Alaska Department of Transportation. Future funding to potentially come from the Dingell-Johnson Act. And we need to do this to get something, I think, that's more acceptable to the folks that use that facility out there. Thank you.
I would second that amendment for the sake of discussion.
Okay, motion been made by member Lynn, seconded by member Stanton Greger to do this amendment to take $6,000 from the Property Development Fund to move forward with revised concept drawings. Discussion. Member Stanton Greger.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. If member Lynn feels comfortable, do you care elaborating more on your thought process behind this, just for my own process here?
Yes, I could spend about half an hour on this, but I'll see if I can do it quickly.
Appreciate it.
We've already spent, I don't remember the exact amount, but it was about $30,000. And Harari Associates developed a draft plan of which has been reviewed and so forth. It's a fairly elaborate plan. I think it's about $11 million. It's way beyond, I think, is probably the right thing in the future, but it's way beyond what I think we can actually afford locally. And also, if we're going to apply for Dingell-Johnson funds, which seems to me right now to be our best opportunity, we need to make some revisions. The last thing I'd talk about is two things. One is that facility is, in my opinion, very much on its legs, particularly the float out there. And people want to argue about, the use of that. I think I could fill up the room here talking about the use being probably more than half from town. I will say that during about 4 months of the year that the lodges are probably the biggest user of it. But beyond that, it's pretty much from town that the use of that area comes from. There's only about a dozen people that live out there full time that really use it. Thank you.
Any other discussion on this proposed amendment? Member Marsh and then.
Yes, thank you. So first of all, the money that funds this property development fund, would you remind me where that accumulates? From what source?
We'll ask the finance director to
It's
give an
mostly
accurate.
land sales.
Land sales. Okay, thank you. And then the second point is, I'm not in favor of this, not having heard about it till just moments ago. But it would seem like those who use it, and whether they're from town or whether they live out there, whether they're from the lodges, till we come up with a way to garner the funds from those direct users, I would say that even though it's $6,000, I would say, let's put a hold on it until we can come up with a way so that the actual users can pay for it.
Valentine?
This is just for new concept drawings that probably just because this is my first time hearing it as well, to drop it from that $11 million to maybe something more affordable, right?
That's right.
Okay. Thank you. That's all for now.
Lynn?
I'd like to address, we've looked between a couple of the staff and myself and manager, we have looked at all kinds of ways to afford to charge for that out there. We have to, and we've also spent considerable amount of time with the attorney. It's not easy to do that. I would really like to be able to charge. However, we can't do that until we get ownership of it. Am I correct on that, manager?
Through the mayor, yeah. Currently, the above water facilities out there are owned by DOT, so Department of Transportation, and everything under that. So all the tidelands are owned by, and some uplands are owned by Department of Natural Resources. DNR would not allow us to charge until we owned it. We got a special letter of agreement just to allow us to keep towing junk vehicles out of there, and it took almost 1.5 years to get that permission. So, yeah, we can't charge for use because currently it's a state facility, so only the state could decide to charge.
Valentine?
So, we would still have to wait no matter what in order, we would still have to wait for this, for us to take ownership for this to even go through essentially, right?
Through the mayor. Actually, you can, the state doesn't care about the borough doing concept drawings, so borough could actually do concept drawings as many as you want for whatever price you want to pay. It's actually doing the work that would have to wait until the borough owns it.
Is there any update on that? I mean, from our emails, it seems like it's still kind of, it's there, but it's not really.
So through the mayor, there's two kind of updates. So the first is that DOT has been asking the borough for several years now to take ownership. The borough has pushed back and said, no, we don't want to take ownership until we own it, particularly the uplands and the tidelands. The assembly had me apply for that process. It's getting close to 3 years, actually, I think now. The tidelands, we should know in maybe a month, and that's positive, meaning the borough should probably own the tidelands here shortly, or it'll come before the assembly for the assembly to accept them or not. The uplands has not made much headway, so I don't know how long that'll take.
What is the balance in our property development fund? And am I correct assuming if we did add the $6,000 to the budget, we would be like $19,000 in the black? Or I thought we were $25,000 in the black with this year's proposed budget overall.
Well, I think I believe Assemblymember Lynn is talking about using the Property Development Fund, which that currently has $734,000 in it. There is many things budgeted for next year in that budget, including $651,000 for the Aquatic Center sewer project and $70,000 for the Banana Point Breakwater project.
Thank you for that update, just so we know how that fund balance is. Okay, any other discussion on the amendment?
Sorry, I just keep asking questions because I'm not fully understanding this, but if we would know about tidelands in about a month, we don't know about the uplands, would this concept would have to be part of both, right? So we couldn't actually do anything yet if with a new concept until we have both, or
So-
am I wrong on this?
Through the mayor, it just depends on what the concept is. I mean, if we're just doing in-water work, then, I mean, clearly the design work, as I said, can happen before the borough ever owns it. There's no restriction on that. Actual work being done would take at least owning the tidelands. So the in-water work, potentially on a project, but it's hard for me to answer your question because I don't know what the concept would look like.
Right.
If, for example, the original concept, there was a tremendous amount of uplands work to create parking areas that the borough had intended to charge for long-term storage. So there's where we could charge for something once we owned it, but that's all in the uplands and we can't do that until DNR turns loose of them. So again, I'm sorry, I can't answer your question fully because it depends on how the design comes back, whether it's an uplands-based project or whether it's in-water work. So.
Okay, any other discussion on the proposed amendment? Okay, we'll clerk call the roll on this amendment made by Member Lynn.
Member Stanton Gregor,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Valentine,
No.
Member Marsh,
No.
Member Schwartz,
No.
Mayor Jensen,
No.
Member Newman.
Yes.
Okay, this proposed amendment to add $6,000 to the budget fails with a 4-3 vote. Now we're back to the main motion to approve the fiscal year budget. Any other discussion? Member Marsh?
Thank you. Again, if we might utilize the talents of Director Tao, I had some questions regarding the revenues and expenditures that are part of the special revenue funds as well as the internal service fund. We've got some revenues, like say for the motor pool fund of 1.347 million and the expenditures of 2.01 million. I'm wondering if we could discuss some of those spending more than we take in kind of situations on that. And with those on the enterprise funds in that situation, I'm thinking the rate increases that we are, that we've discussed or will discuss will compensate for those.
May I ask what page that is?
21 on the agenda.
I guess I'll start with the motor pool and Chris can jump in too. So every year, the departments budget a little bit of expenses to transfer into the motor pool funds, creating a larger fund, which is why it's called an internal service fund. It's kind of like a savings account for vehicles replacement. And as it gets to a certain balance and it's time to purchase a new vehicle, they utilize that balance, which is why there's more expenses than revenues. It'll use the reserves in that fund to purchase those revenues. And that's kind of similar to a lot of the other special revenue funds, for example, that you see in that have less revenues than expenditures. As I said earlier, the Property Development Fund has $734,000 in cash. We still are getting some more cash. We're waiting for, if you remember, we sold those parcels of land. I don't believe all of that has been paid for. And so next year, when we transfer money to the aquatic center for that project, we will use the reserves in that fund. The other department you asked me about, Borough Organizational Fund, when we formed a borough, we got $600,000 to help administer the costs associated with forming a borough. We have $56,000 left. We've only, in the budget, you'll only see an expense for $56,000. You won't see a revenue because we already have that $56,000. We're just going to use that up at some point and close out that account, and that will be over. The marine passenger fee, there's $10,000 more in revenue than expenses, so that's fine. We also have $155,000 in that account already. And as far as the enterprise funds, that's pretty common. I don't know if you remember the work session that we went over. There was a spreadsheet, and it talks about there is a negative balance, looks like a negative balance, but once you add in capital project costs, which aren't a regular operating occurrence, and depreciation, every enterprise fund was at a positive balance. And that's pretty much what we do. It's not uncommon for governments not to cover completely depreciation because so many of the things that we get are from grants. So, and it's a fine line. You don't want to bump up rates too high, more than you need for the future, right? We've just had this conversation with all these other rate increases that we're doing, but we don't want to be short either. So, which is why we have rate studies and things that we talk about each year. Was there any other fund that?
The Economic Development Fund, we've got 100,000 and 700 going out.
Yeah, and underneath those budgets, you'll see, usually I put what the balance is of in that fund. There's, as of April 14th, there was $4.6 million in that fund. And so if the expenses are more than the revenues, that means it will come from reserves. And that $650,000 that is in the budget under the expenses for the Scow Bay haul out, that was approved by the voters. Yeah.
So, sorry, in that economic fund, you say we do have 4.6 million in reserves. Okay.
Any other discussion on the main motion? Member Stanton Greger.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I said this in the second reading, but it bears repeating. I wanted to thank borough staff, in particular Jody Tao, as the finance director, for bringing us a balanced budget. I know that is not easy for every department to pare back some of the things that may feel important to their departments to get a balanced budget. So I'll definitely be voting yes. Just to briefly touch on what member of the community, Martin, brought up in terms of ACL. Don't invalidate that statement as a chair of the Harbor Board. I know for myself, I feel comfortable voting yes for I'll just grab an easy piece of language around that, and that from the ordinance itself, that no funds may be spent under this appropriation without the Assembly's approval of a written agreement. I like the ACL part in there because it gives the borough manager an opportunity to negotiate with them, and then it'll come back before the Assembly to vet it at that time. So I feel comfortable with that piece. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Member Marsh?
Thank you. So yes, in light of the question that was brought up, I had had a question why the $1 million coming out of the harbor reserves hadn't been presented before the Harbor Board Advisory Board. And I still don't know the answer to that. But I appreciate the point that the harbor reserves do come from the raw fish tax, which the fishermen work hard to provide for themselves, and we get a bonus in the borough with some of those monies coming back. So is there a way that that $1 million could be reimbursed? I know in a discussion with Harbor Master Wallen, she had said that essentially there was going to be a reimbursement because of the utility profits that were going to be put in that would equate to the cost of that, the outgoing initial $1 million. So it essentially be kind of a near zero net cost to the borough. And I don't know, she's not here. So I'm wondering if there's a way we can figure that out. And if we do have 4.6 million in the Economic Development Fund, would it make sense to take it from there rather than the harbor reserves, which does come from the fishing fleet? Just some questions I don't know the answers to.
Well, I guess if a person assembly member wants to make a change at this point, you'd have to propose an amendment, get a second, and then discuss it and vote on it to change it coming from the Harbor Enterprise Fund. At this point, it's coming from the Harbor Enterprise Fund if we vote on this today. Whether we will come to an agreement with ACL that the Assembly can agree with or not, I can't answer that question because that's down the road. I'll wait. Did you have any more input, Member Marsh? Or?
Other than, I guess I would propose an amendment that maybe instead of the $1 million coming from the harbor reserves, it comes from the Economic Development Fund.
We have a hand come up.
You want a second before I?
Sure. Is there a second? Seeing no second, that proposed amendment fails. So you don't have to explain anything.
Okay, well, I can anyway. You know, we've talked about the Economic Development Fund because it makes the most sense, right? But there are a few hangups we have right now with that. One is the Scow Bay turnaround project. All the federal grants we've gotten, they're sort of frozen right now. We want to see what happens there and make sure that we don't take a lot of money out of the economic fund for something else that we've committed to Scow Bay. And so we're kind of just in limbo with that. Also, to use more than $200,000 from an economic fund takes a vote of the public. And so that takes time. And no one, I don't think, is opposed for doing that in the future. But right now, I mean, time was kind of the essence with the dock. And so we thought this was the fastest route to go. But that's not to say that that can't happen in the future. Whether it's taking $1 million right away or paying back over 5 years or, you know, something like that. But those were some of the hurdles that we were facing when we were talking about funding.
Reports.
To Bob's point, also to Jay's about the nothing happening until we vote on it, if the money's to be spent. But what I'd like to know, or I'd like to emphasize is the float or the dock, whatever you want to call it. I'd like some information on what that's going to generate to pay back. Because I think that's what Mr. Martin's talking about is getting those funds reimbursed. It's not, yeah, so he's giving me the head nod. But anyway, when you're doing negotiations, I don't know what that looks like, but I guess keeping that in mind.
I guess one way to come up with a number, what that dock would generate, how much head tax money do we get from the one cruise ship that American Cruise Lines brings in a year? Do you have a rough idea, Jody? Okay,
That would be a guess.
yeah, and then you have to.
25,000 would be a guess. I can email you that information. But also I think, you think about when ACL isn't using it, other cruise ships are going to use it and that'll get them out of the harbor. So the harbor will generate more money being able to dock more boats. That's just something.
I guess is one theory. Any other discussion on the budget? At the last meeting, during the second reading, I voted no for the overall budget. And the reason was because of the $1 million coming out of the Harbor Enterprise Fund. And I intend to vote no today, knowing very well that the budget will pass. I appreciate all the work from the finance department. I just think we're going about this wrong. We talked about PEDC. We just talked about the Scow Bay development. We have potentially the money, very like, I don't know what percentage that all the money will come through for the Scow Bay project, which we've been dealing with for 20 years. And to have a haul out facility in Petersburg that will haul any seiner in the fleet, we're short $1.5 million for the estimated cost of a travel lift, a submersible, amphibious, whatever you want to call it, travel lift. So we take the $1 million out of the Harbor Reserve Fund that was generated by harbor users. In my opinion, should be used for the maintenance of the harbors, that the people, that's where the money came from. And if we didn't put it towards this American Cruise Line stock, if that comes to fruition, we'd have 2/3 of the money to buy a travel lift and make that facility fully functional. So that's my rationale and that's why I'm gonna vote no on the overall budget, because I'm sure it'll pass 6-1. So that's just my crystal ball tells me that. So any other input? Clerk, call the roll.
Member Stanton Greger,
Yes.
Member Newman,
Yes.
Mayor Jensen,
No.
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Valentine,
Yes.
Member Marsh.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, so the budget passes in its third and final reading with the 5-2 vote with Member Marsh and Mayor Jensen opposed. That brings us to the next item under unfinished business. This is ordinance 2025-06, an ordinance amending section 4.28.130 of the Petersburg Municipal Code relating to the sales tax exemption for seniors to limit the exemption to low-income seniors and directing that the proposed amendment be submitted to the qualified voters of the borough. This is the second reading, and we've also just had the public hearing. Entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its second reading.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Member Stanton Greger, seconded by Member Mr. Newman or Mr. Schwartz, somebody. Member Stanton Greger.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the two members of the public who came in and gave their feedback on it today. It's anything regarding sales tax exemptions it's tricky to say the least and very complex. I'll be voting yes on this today. Whether that it passes with the voters or not will be secondary. I think we've got a lot of time for people to make up their minds, but I think I know as an assembly person, I feel compelled to get it on the ballot. I've not sat on the assembly when something for the ballot's been voted down. I think it's we owe it to the public to let them vote on it. So I'll be voting yes. Thanks.
Any other input on this ordinance? Clerk, call the roll.
Member Marsh,
Yes.
Member Valentine,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Stanton Greger,
Yes.
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
Mayor Jensen,
Yes.
Member Newman,
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2025-06 passes unanimously in its second reading. This brings us to ordinance 2025-07. This is an ordinance updating chapter 14.16 of the municipal code entitled Electric Utility, the second reading. I'd entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its second reading.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Marsh. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mayor Jensen,
Yes.
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
Member Newman,
Yes.
Member Stanton Greger,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Valentine,
Yes.
Member Marsh,
Yes.
Ordinance 2025-07 passes unanimously in its second reading. That brings us to ordinance 2025-08. This is also in its second reading. This is an ordinance updating chapter 14.04.420 of the municipal code entitled Water Rates, Schedule and Fees. Entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its second reading. Any
I'll move.
Second. Motion been made by Member Marsh, seconded by Member Newman, I believe. Discussion. Member Lynn.
Just a question. We talked earlier about all the testing we're gonna have to do. We're gonna have to increase, redo our lab to do testing. But we also, Wrangell and Ketchikan have the same problem we have. Have we done any exploration with, and I don't know what the time frame is from the time we have to take the test to the time it's actually, from the time we take the test to it's actually results there. But have we done any negotiation or any discussion with the other municipalities to see if there's a better way to do this to save money?
Not specifically on that issue. We have been in touch with other communities and they're facing the same challenges we are. And, if we find a more efficient way to do something to save some money on testing, we will certainly do that.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on this water rate schedule and fees? Seeing none, clerk call the roll.
Member Marsh,
Yes.
Member Valentine,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Stanton Greger,
Yes.
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
Mayor Jensen,
Yes.
Member Newman,
Yes.
Ordinance 2025-08 passes unanimously in its second reading. Brings us to ordinance 2025-09, an ordinance updating chapter 14.08.320 of the municipal code entitled Sewer Collection Rates. This is the second reading. I'd entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its second reading.
I'll move.
Second.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Marsh, seconded by Member Stanton Greger. Discussion. Clerk call the roll.
Member Valentine,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
Mayor Jensen,
Yes.
Member Marsh,
Yes.
Member Stanton Greger,
Yes.
Member Newman,
Yes.
Ordinance 2025-09 passes unanimously also in its second reading. That brings us to ordinance 2025-10. This is an ordinance adding section N, marine passenger ship refuse, to chapter 14.12.140 entitled Rates for Refuse Collection, second reading. I'd entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its second reading.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Valentine, I believe, seconded by Member Marsh. Discussion. None. Clerk call the roll.
Member Newman,
Yes.
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
Member Valentine,
Yes.
Mayor Jensen,
Yes.
Member Stanton Greger,
Yes.
Member Marsh,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2025-10 passes unanimously also in its second reading. That brings us to item 15 on today's agenda, new business. First item A is resolution 2025-11, a resolution of the Petersburg Borough setting the millage rates for the fiscal year July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. Entertain a motion to adopt this millage rate that was presented to us by finance.
Don't move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Valentine. And if you look at it, if I'm not mistaken, that will set the millage rate for service area 1, including area-wide total to 10.8 mils. Is that correct?
Correct.
And what was last year's?
10.8
10? So it's gone up,
mils, yeah.
yeah, 0.80. That's what we need to balance the budget though, correct? Yeah. Okay, so, any other discussion?
Yes.
Member Marsh?
I do have a question where we have it quoted in the charter, section 12.03 states that the tax on real property shall not exceed 10 mils except tax on real property necessary to retire debt approved by the voters is excluded from this limit. So how are we doing it at 10.8 if we by charter can't go more than 10? Are we talking stuff outside the real property definition?
I think 10.8 includes the bond debt that we're paying off as well.
Correct.
For
And bond
what
debt
proposed
is not
debt.
included in that. Correct.
So, any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
Member Newman,
Yes.
Yes.
Member Marsh, Member Valentine,
Yes.
Mayor Jensen,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Stanton Greger.
Yes.
Okay, resolution 2025-11 passes unanimously. Item B under new business, letter of support for Taku watershed cleanup of the Tulsa Chief Mine. This was, that's the request of Assembly Member Lynn, a letter to the Alaska delegation in support of the cleanup of Tulsa Chief Mine has been drafted. I'd entertain a motion to approve this letter.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Valentine, and I'm not sure who made the second, but there was a couple people, so it's on the floor. Discussion. I see, we've addressed this many times, but I'm not so sure that the last part of it is, was in our other letters, but looks like they're proposing another mine downstream from the Tulsa Chief. And it affects one of the most productive salmon spawning and rearing habitats in the region. So I see no problem with sending this letter. Member Lynn?
Thank you. You hit dead on what I brought it up is because it's a new mining facility, and this has a potential, if it was to break loose, this really would ruin a fishery.
And they haven't done anything about the mine that's leaching, so just add another one to it. So I agree with this letter wholeheartedly. Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Member Marsh,
Yes.
Member Valentine,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Stanton Greger,
Yes.
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
Mayor Jensen,
Yes.
Member Newman.
Yes.
Okay, we will send off the letter. Item 16, communications. We have communications listed on our website, also on this agenda. We make a habit of not reading those from the assembly. So if anybody wants to see them, they could look online. Assembly discussion items, assembly member comments, item A under that topic. Member Lynn.
I have two items. The first one, we had a special SEPA meeting last week to review the bids. We have 3 bids for the construction of the turbine, a third turbine at Tyee. It was an interesting meeting. The results of the meeting was we gave the go-ahead for the CEO to negotiate on one of those bids or all those bids. The second part of that, though, was kind of interesting to me. With the president's executive orders, we are required to have at least 45% of all the materials that are in the turbine to be made in the U.S. We had to hire a consultant that had to go through all the individual parts that go into that and to trace back to the actual origin of where actually the ore was mined for those for the metals in that. And we have to show a track record of where that came from and where it goes. I've never been involved with something like that before. The consultant came back and said that his experience was that not only should we look at 45% as part of that, but we should look at about 55% because as you go further down the line and you actually get into the construction, that you'll find that there will be parts that, what we originally thought up front, didn't occur. So he said his recommendation to us is to make sure that 55% is US made. The other part of that was that all the steel that is going into the construction of the pilot house, which will house the third turbine, which is about 95% done, has to be US made. And so that's, all this is significantly raising the cost, and I talked to that later, but I've never been involved with a track that we having to track the individual component parts. And I'd answer any questions on that if somebody has any. Then the second was, I would ask, this discussion we had earlier, I would ask staff that at some point along the line to go back and with what Member Valentine gave us related to marine passenger fees. I think it's time we go back and take a look at should those marine passenger fees be raised and what should that be? And I would ask that the manager take that job on and sometime and later come back with a recommendation. Is it, or should we change it, or how should we change it if we do? Thank you.
Any questions of Member Lynn? That's very interesting on the SEPA update. We don't need prices to go up on everything, but it looks like it is. Any other assembly members have comments? Any recognitions today by staff or assembly? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.